One thing that can't be taught when it comes to baby sleep is years of experience. These are some things that I want to share with you today after having 10 years helping parents teach their little ones to sleep and parent confidently day and night as a sleep consultant and parenting consultant. Hey everybody, I'm Dr. Sarah Mitchell from Helping Babies Sleep. And today we're going to talk about 10 things that I've learned in 10 years. And if you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to hit subscribe to never miss a baby sleep tip. All right, so here we go. The very first thing that kind of dawned on me when I was going through this is that, wow, sleep is a learned habit. Simple, but true. We think sleep should be this beautiful, natural, instinctual thing. And yes, the drive to sleep, it is biologically based. But the way we sleep is a learned habit. Sounds weird. We don't think of that with our children. One, because we don't really think they're capable. And in the newborn stage, they're not. But after 4 months of age, they are capable of self-soothing. But it is a learned habit. And if you think about yourself, if I said to you tonight, you can't sleep in your favorite position and I'm going to take away your pillow, that would be very uncomfortable for you. And you would struggle to fall asleep, toss and turn, be uncomfortable, but eventually you would learn a new way to sleep because sleep is a learned habit. The second thing that I've learned is that we can gently work on sleep habits in the newborn stage. We think of sleep often as like a retroactive thing that we have to fix later on. But for most kiddos, we can gently work on gentle newborn sleep shaping in those first 4 to 8 weeks because sleep is a learned habit. Right? And it's a skill that we teach our kids. The problem is that there's a large number of people out there who have underlying issues that they haven't really diagnosed yet, but the symptom comes out with troubled sleep. But the root cause might be undiagnosed reflux, some sort of a food intolerance or insensitivity, gas, potentially having feeding issues, essentially. Feeding and sleep in the newborn stage are very much tied together. So some people will have more challenges than others in those first few months because of that. The third thing that I've learned, having doing this for 10 years, is that having an independent sleeper, a kiddo that you can put down completely awake without being rocked, fed, have a pacifier, nothing, having an independent sleeper, it's really not just about the sleep. It's actually about reconciling the image of parenting that you had versus the reality of it. Because let's face it, the image that we all had was we were going to be these amazing parents who had kiddos who slept like champs and never cried. But often the reality is that it doesn't really work out that way for most of us for a variety of reasons. And so when we're working on sleep, we're actually working on our very first parenting obstacle. It's not the physiologically and anatomically based breastfeeding challenge. It's the behavioral modification, because sleep is a learned behavior, the very first behavioral challenge that we have to work on. And that is kind of mind-blowing, but it is. The fourth thing that I've learned is that there are many cultural and ancestral issues that arise when you first become a parent, and many of them show up in your sleeping arrangements. So I often see parents who come from different cultural backgrounds who have conflict over where the baby should sleep or how the baby should sleep. I've also found that a lot of parents, when they're getting into the stages where, gosh, the way we're doing things, we just can't go on. They're older than 4 months. We're going to have to do some sleep teaching. And that might involve some tears as our child protests change. A lot of parents have issues come up from their own past, and they tend to project onto their kiddo feelings from their own childhood when they felt like they weren't heard or listened to or given the attention that they felt they needed at the time. Right? What a trip. What a trip this parenting thing is, isn't it? It's really a very eye-opening journey of self-discovery. Having kids teaches you a lot about yourself and the concepts that you were passed down from generations before you. The fifth thing I've learned is that sleep, it's kind of subjective, right? One mother's dream sleeper could be someone else's nightmare. And why is that? That relates to how much sleep adults need. Some people need more sleep than others. You may be getting a 6-hour stretch of sleep with your newborn and thinking like, oh my God, I'm getting 6 hours. This is amazing. Whereas somebody else might be like, oh my God, I'm only getting 6 hours. I'm being tortured. Help me. So there is some subjectivity around sleep. The sixth thing that I've learned is that, postpartum anxiety is highly underdiagnosed. In the last 10 years since I had my first one, postpartum anxiety has become so much more spoken about, which I'm so glad, because I realized that I suffered silently without knowing what it was for quite some time. Okay? Signs of postpartum anxiety can include things like never really feeling like you can relax, having trouble sleeping, always having to be busy, feeling kind of angry all the time, very irritable, just to name a few, sometimes a little bit of hopelessness. It's very, very common. And if you're feeling any of these symptoms, you definitely want to speak with your healthcare practitioner. The seventh thing I've realized is that it can be hard sometimes for parents to follow directions. So I have worked with so many people who have taken or bought a book at Amazon. By the way, my book, The Helping Baby Sleep Method, The Art and Science of Teaching Your Baby to Sleep, is available on Amazon. But they might take a book and they don't follow all the pieces to it. In the book, we talk about 5 pillars of having great sleep. People tend to compartmentalize sleep. They think about naps as being different than night sleep, but they are all tied together, right? The 5 pillars here are understanding that sleep is a learned behavior, knowing that timing is really important in setting your child up for success, understanding about how to be an intentional feeder, using the bottle and the boob for nutrition rather than comfort long-term. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but if you need to work on sleep, you might have to change some things. Messaging, so setting up routines and giving the same message about sleep. And then the 5th pillar really is responding. How are you going to help your kiddo when they're uncomfortable learning something new? But what I have found over years of doing this is that often people will take something, a methodology, but they don't apply all of the parts to it. So for example, I've worked with a lot of people who've come to me where they did the Ferber method, because a lot of physicians recommend the Ferber method. That's not the only method out there, by the way. It's not my favorite. Where they recommend the Ferber method. And so they have a kiddo who has only ever napped in arms, being put into a crib and being Ferberized, essentially. And after 5 days, they're not making progress because maybe they're still co-sleeping at night, or they're doing Ferber at night, but they're letting them nap on them in the day, and they won't make progress, right? Because they didn't follow what the book said or the course said to the T. I have a lot of people too that might, take my book, but then not take away the pacifier, which is one of the main sleep crutches, and then they don't make progress. When you're looking at a methodology, you want to make sure that you're setting all your child up for success with all the aspects that the author has implemented, because they're there for a reason. The 8th thing that I've learned being a sleep consultant for over 10 years is that many people are inadvertently giving mixed messages about sleep. And this kind of goes back to what I was just saying. Sometimes they let them nap on them, sometimes it's in the crib, sometimes it's from the pacifier, sometimes it's the boob, all these mixed messages. It makes it hard to learn what sleep looks like. And how do we learn, right? We know sleep is a learned habit. How do we learn? We learn with repeated exposure to the same stimulus and the same response. But when we're getting all these mixed messages, that's why people don't make progress in their sleep teaching, is that they're giving mixed messages. Sometimes they let their baby wake up and cry. Sometimes they let them wake up and they feed them. Sometimes they let them wake up and they give them a pacifier. All these different mixed messages make it hard for a kiddo to learn what's to be expected of them. Of course, I'm talking after the 4-month stage. The 9th thing I've noticed is that most parents don't give something new a long enough chance to work. And I remember this feeling so vividly. It was with my second, and I brought her home from the hospital. She had been home for about 5 or 6 days, and I knew exactly what I was going to be doing. I was so much more confident the second time around, right? And I was using the combat awake method, which is a method that I teach in the book on how to get kids to fall asleep in the bassinet rather than in arms so we can avoid the transfer. And I was standing over her doing this method, thinking to myself, oh my gosh, I'm not really sure this is going to work. And I started to feel my anxiety rise because I wasn't sure. I really wanted to get off on good sleep habits from the beginning. And I said, you know what? I'm going to look at the clock and I'm going to give this 5 minutes to work. And yes, she's protesting, but she's not like escalating. She's protesting. It's a whiny protest. I'm familiar with that sound. I'm going to give this a chance to work. I'm going to wait to that 5 minutes. I'm going to watch the clock. I'm going to give something new a chance to work. And lo and behold, she was protesting. And then bam, she was asleep around the 4-minute mark. I was like, oh my gosh. If I had picked her up, I probably could have just induced myself into another hour of rocking, trying to get her calm and elongating the whole process. Thank goodness I was able to trust myself and give something new a chance to work. It's very hard to do when you're a new parent. Very, very hard to do. The 10th thing that I've learned, and one of my friends at Stanford Sleep Dog mentioned this. He says, you know what? We don't really sleep train babies. We sleep train their parents. Yes. And, it's so true. It's so true because we can't control them. All we can do is control how we respond to them. And again, I'm talking older than 4 months old. Okay. We are really, teaching the parents how to respond to help shape that behavior. essentially, and how to be a good detective, and how to set your child up for success by knowing timing, understanding the different cries, being able to rule out hunger, all of those aspects. But the most important thing that I've learned, really, in all these 10 years is that all of us just want the very best for our babies. We just want the very best for our babies. Ideally, it's without tears. And the thing about tears is, and you can watch one of my videos from last week where I talked about, can you have great baby sleep without tears? Is the idea that the tears are your child's way of expressing themselves. And when you understand that sleep is a learned habit and you're breaking a habit and you're getting them to work harder to do something that was easy for them to do when they had more help, there will be frustration and that will manifest in tears. But the amount of tears is something that you might be able to influence with your ability to be consistent, your ability to set them up for success with the timing of sleep. But then the third measure, which you have no control over, is their temperament. Some kids are much more flexible and adapt to change more than others, and that we have no control. All we can do is control how we respond to our kiddos. It's been super fun here sharing with you 10 things that I've learned in the last 10 years as a sleep consultant. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to hit subscribe. Thanks for being here.